Chapter 18 of The Tale of Buster Bumblebee. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Lily. The Tale of Buster Bumblebee by Arthur Scott Bailey. Chapter 18, Following the Crowd. Well, the next day Buster Bumblebee arrived at Farmer Green's place just as the cuckoo clock in the kitchen was striking 9. And he knew at once that Jimmy Rabbit must have told him the truth about the raising bee, for the farmyard was crowded with wagons and carryalls and buggies and gigs. There were people everywhere, so many that Buster thought all the world must be there, and he began to look about him carefully. But nowhere could he find what he had come to see, so he asked a ruffianly-looking wasp where the raising bee was, but the wasp, who was hurrying by, merely glanced at Buster and said, with a frown, "Follow the crowd!" Buster remembered then that that was exactly what Jimmy Rabbit had told him to do, and now, as he looked all around, he noticed that Farmer Green was already leading the way to a pile of lumber near the old cow barn. Everybody was following him, and a good many small boys began to shout to nobody in particular, "Hurrah! Hurrah! She's going up!" Buster Bumblebee hastened to overtake the crowd. "They must mean the raising bee," he said to himself, "and from what those boys are saying, I rather that it's a lady raising bee, and she's going to fly for the company." In his eagerness to see everything that was happening, Buster buzzed very close to a good many people, and though most of them paid little heed to him, there was one boy who slapped at him with his hat, and all but hit him, too. After that, Buster was more careful. He flew higher, and at last he found a fine seat on a tall sunflower, from which he could view every move that was made. Farmer Green's guests, that is, the men, for the women had not left the house, the guests all took off their coats and began to arrange themselves around some huge timbers that lay upon the ground. And a great shouting arose. Everybody seemed to be talking at once, and the small boys were everywhere, chasing one another about and getting in everyone's way. Then all was quiet for a few minutes while Farmer Green said something to the men. And as soon as he had stopped talking, some of the men began to lift a sort of framework of wood into the air. When they had raised it exactly as Farmer Green wanted it, other men began to pound about the foot of it with hammers. But Buster Bumblebee, though he watched everything very closely, hadn't the slightest idea what they were doing. "Hi there!" he called to old dog Spot. "Where's the raising bee?" Old Spot promptly looked bewildered. "I don't know what you're talking about," he replied. "I don't know anything about any bee, and I wish you wouldn't trouble me with your silly questions. These men are helping us to build our new barn, and I'm too busy to talk to anyone." Buster Bumblebee was certainly disappointed, and he soon decided that Jimmy Rabbit must have been mistaken. It wasn't the raising bee, after all, that had brought all the neighbors together there. They had come to help Farmer Green with his new barn. Old dog Spot had said so, and he ought to know, if anyone did. End of Chapter 18. Following the Crowd.